from one of the most easily despicable characters in the MHA series to a man actually on the search for redemption. And whether or not he's deserving of that redemption is up for you to decide, but you can't deny that Endeavor is probably one of the best written characters in MHA, and his story is so monumental to how a flawed character can be redeemed in the eyes of the reader. And I do think, as well written as he is, he's been kind of robbed of some of his biggest achievements in the series, at least up to chapter 405. And we're going to get into that today, so spoiler alerts, as I said, if you haven't read up to at least chapter 405 of the manga, and be sure to like and subscribe if you like MHA content like this. I plan to do more theory videos going forward, but it's just there were so many chapters that came out in the last few weeks that I kind of gotten a little swamped. But stay tuned for more theory videos on MHA and some of the characters. Alright, so as I stated before, Endeavor is one of the best written characters in the story, at least I think better than Deku, honestly. For a man that went from almost every single moment on screen, I kind of was like, oh my god, I fucking hate this guy, to cheering for every intense battle he's had. The story of Endeavor has been, let's just say, complicated at best. Endeavor bears the cross of being an abuser. He abused his wife, and he literally bred his children for the sole purpose of surpassing All Might someday, leading to one of those children going down a path of death and destruction. And even when he eventually did breed the perfect child, he just kind of ended up resenting him because his father saw him more as a product rather than an actual child or his own flesh and blood. Just saying those things aloud, I kind of realized, like, oh my god, this was such a terrible guy. But the story's taken different steps to kind of actually bring that together. And it all culminated in the moment that All Might retired after his epic battle with AFO. Endeavor was left with the #1 position. And at that moment, he kind of realized that he's been chasing the dream of being #1, but he never actually truly understood what it meant to be a symbol of peace. Because in a moment where he should have felt glory as well as happiness for finally hitting the achievement he's been searching for so long, he felt nothing but it seems like fear and regret. Because he wondered if all the decisions he made, was it actually worth it in the end? He feared not being able to live up to his predecessor and regretted everything he had done to his family to get here. But this leads him down a path of trying to be the symbol of peace as well as making up for the sins of his family. But honestly, I think this is where the story fails him. He doesn't ever really have that I am the #1 moment. And if he does, it's usually taken away or it's undermined by something that happens later on in the story. And I believe that this happens consistently. And I'm going to use these 4 battles as bullet points for why I think he's been robbed of all his glorious achievements. And I know what you're probably thinking.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I'm gonna try to explain as best as I can, because I know the one that usually comes to people's mind is usually the fight versus High End. That was probably one of his most epic fights, and I remember watching it in the anime with my girlfriend, and just thinking every single moment of this is nail-biting. This is amazing. And he even does have his sort of All Might moment where he raises his hand in victory at the end. So this is the only one that I might concede might be his I am the #1 moment, because I do think even All Might would have had difficulty with a fight like this. But this moment is completely undermined by the fact that later on in the story we go to the Garaki's lab and we see not 1, but like 10 of these motherfuckers in a test tube. So the fact that he only beat 1, it makes it kind of a little underwhelming when you think about it, especially since Mirko, like 1v5, a bunch of them. And I know you're gonna probably say, oh yeah, no, they were not really ready, they just came out the test tube, they were gonna take hours to stabilize. But we saw that they were stabilizing pretty quick within like 40 minutes. And the heroes were for the most part still doing pretty well against them, and also, she 1v5 them. I think any lack of stabilization in their development would probably be stunted by the fact that they are jumping her. She even managed to kill, which I thought was one of the coolest design ones, in between her thighs. Which, let's be real, that's not one of the worst ways to go out, you know what I'm saying? But that fight against High End with Endeavor is undermined even more by the fact that not only did they have over 10 High Ends in a test tube, but then, after those High Ends are destroyed by Shigaraki's Decay Wave, they pull out even more near High Ends, which for the most part have proven to be kind of close, if not almost exactly the same power level as the regular High Ends. Though it might have been the strongest one, really underwhelming now that I think about it, because he really was on the edge of his seat the entire fight. And seeing that everyone else has defeated a High End with not as much effort as he did, especially with Mirio literally just like punching one in the head. It makes it kind of underwhelming that he fought so hard to beat one. So yeah, the I am number one moment, totally wrong. Now the next big one is probably his fight against the AFO Shigaraki fusion. And I'm not gonna lie, at the beginning of that fight, he was kind of giving Shigaraki a little bit of back and forth. I was surprised that he was able to dodge a lot of his attacks and not get decayed almost immediately. But in the end, even with Shigaraki with no quirks, we remember how that ended.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
It wasn't until he was aided by, let's be real, the real number 1 and number 2 heroes, that he actually started to put up much of a fight. And though in the end, he did give Shigaraki that crazy prominence burn, which, my god, bro, get that man some lotion. He looking ashy. In the end, Shigaraki just ended up converting into All for One, and then they just kind of proceeded to go back and forth between him and Deku, who I guess that fight was more important to, because that wasn't really Endeavor's fight in the grand scheme of things. There was another big moment in this fight that we might be forgetting. And this takes place after Endeavor finds out about Dabi actually being Toya. And that was such a big moment in the manga. I remember everyone was waiting forever, but that's not really what I'm talking about. We forget that this motherfucker brought Gigantomachia to the fight, which for the most part, we never actually really see that man take any damage. So him being there while all the heroes are essentially on their heels was kind of a crazy moment. And though for the most part, Best Jeanist is actually the one who kind of sealed Gigantomachia, it was Endeavor that hit the final blow. And I was thinking to myself, my god, man, if that guy is physically strong enough to knock out Gigantomachia, he must be him. And then that's completely undermined by the fact that, like, they flash back to the fact that the kids gave Gigantomachia anesthetic, and then they say that's actually what knocked him out. It just happened that Endeavor hit him at the same time.
You serious?
So that's now like, what, 2 to 3 L's that this man is holding? It's kind of ridiculous. He's starting to look like more Vegeta to the series than he's looking like the Goku. He's lucky his L's are more philosophical than they are actual L's, because he does win, but it's just not as cool when it's constantly undermined by stuff like that. But then this leads me into, I think, 2 of his most important fights for the series, and I think the actual culmination of his character. And that's his fight between All for One, the real body, and his fight against Dabi, which wasn't really a fight. It was more a situation where can he actually convert him back to the boy he knew as a child. So first, let's get into the fight against AFO, which I have to put this disclaimer in here. I constantly heard people saying that this is a fight that Endeavor managed to win that All Might couldn't beat. Let's not forget that Endeavor is fighting a severely nerfed AFO. He can't hear, he can't see, and literally the only thing keeping him alive is that mask he's wearing. So only thing he had to do is really just break the mask. And yes, All Might did fight AFO while he was in that mask form, but you also gotta remember that All Might was also severely nerfed from the first time he fought him. And the first time he actually beat him, which he basically blew his brains out, he fought him at full power. I just felt that needed to be said because I constantly heard that. But anyway, as for the battle itself, Endeavor did kind of fumble it a little bit. He did almost cost the match by not having his head in the game. He was so distracted with the whole Toya versus Shoto thing that he kind of was getting hit by a lot of big attacks, and he was not helping more than he was hurting the fight. But he did manage to turn that around, because he did manage to go plus ultra in that battle, even unlocking his cool firearm thing that he hit AFO with, as well as heat vision, which, what the hell could he do that? And let's not forget the biggest part was when he prominence burned that man to ash, which, you know, again, yo, get this man some lotion, which we all know how that ended up turning out though. No, he pulled out that whole rewinding bullet thing out of his back pocket and,
Here we go again.
in my opinion, kind of screwed the story in many ways, more than one. But in the biggest way he screwed the story is by straight up stealing Endeavor's biggest moment in the story, in my opinion. That was his real moment to prove strength-wise that he is just as good as All Might and he could protect the people of Japan. Doesn't help, but this is also further undermined by the fact that All Might fought AFO again with no quirks, just the power of money, and managed to do much better against him than Endeavor did against that weakened version, with help from significantly more people. I mean, All Might did have help, but it was staying. He lasted like 3 manga panels. I don't really call it help. And now Bakugo is also fighting against AFO while being grievously injured in an immense amount of pain. and it looks like he's about to win, and he's only about 15 to 16 years old. So yeah, number one moment, totally stolen.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Now, the final moment is, can he be redeemed for the sins of his past? That is when he and Toya go head to head, because Toya is on the precipice of exploding, gonna wipe out a big chunk of the city, as well as all the people within it. So that leaves Endeavor to either Takano Jutsu his son out of doing this, or to finally end Toya once and for all. And for a moment after he's tried to reach him, but, you know, Dabi / Toya is completely lost at this moment. He is consumed by his rage, and it is embodied by his current look. And Endeavor comes to that final moment where he realizes that if he can't save his son, he's just going to have to die with him. And I thought that was such a beautiful moment, that this would have been the culmination of Endeavor's whole story. That he took the sins that he did, and he was willing to die to rectify them. But in that crowning moment, let's just say, Endeavor couldn't get it up. So in the end, it was kind of avoided because not only did Ray show up to help, but the rest of the family showed up to use their ice quirks to stop him. And though it wasn't enough, his actual perfect son came and kind of saved the situation. Which, to be honest, this wasn't really Shoto's cross to bear. He is Endeavor's son, but this is not the sin that he created. He did not have anything to do with Toya turning into Dabi. He barely even knew him. He was a child. When he died, the only sin that Shoto really had was being his most perfect son out of all of that. But yeah, that whole moment I think was a little bit stolen, especially since it seems like at the end, Dabi ends up dying anyway, and Endeavor's alive, and it doesn't help that his last words was that he still hates his family. So he doesn't actually rectify the situation that was Toya. And it also isn't helped by the fact that Toya also had an ice quirk, so that means he was the perfect son from the get-go. So it kind of made Endeavor look a little worse in my opinion. Because in the end, what does Endeavor's story really serve at that point now? Because he's not only failed to prove that he's the number one, but he's also failed to save his son. And I could give you that he has brought his family a little closer together, but they still have to go back and bear the cross that is losing their son again. Because whether or not Toya is still alive is yet to be determined, but all that remains is now Dabi. So philosophically, Toya is gone, and that burden that family had to face is still there. So Endeavor overall has kind of been shafted in the story, in my opinion. Not only does he have to bear the cross of, like, you know, ruining his family, that being public knowledge, the fact that Japan under his protection has gone completely ruined. I mean, beyond repair at this point, or close to beyond repair at this point. Heroes as a whole have collapsed, the city's underground. Yeah, it's not looking great for him. So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think Endeavor's story ended up playing out the best, because those were the things that were most important to him, and in the end it kind of just amounted to nothing. He's not the number one, he's not fixing his family. What purpose does his story serve? That being said though, he's still without a doubt my favorite character, and I'm actually surprised at the writing for making me like him, because he is despicable in every way. So them doing that is unique. But then again, there's Bakugo, who also kind of was the same at the beginning. So, you know, still my favorite characters, but, you know, is he really that unique? I don't know. But anyway, that's all I have for today. Thanks again for watching. I plan to do more theory videos like this, so those of you guys who are subscribed, hopefully you like it. And definitely let me know in the comments below how you feel about Endeavor. Do you think that he's redeemed? Do you think there's some aspect that I'm missing about his character? Or do you think I'm spot on with my representation of how he's been kind of screwed over in the story? Let me know in the comments below. But anyway, thanks again for everyone that subscribed. Thanks again for everyone that's been sticking with me. As I said before, growing little by little, but I really appreciate everyone. So thanks again. That's all I have for today. Stay safe, my ninjas. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.